This is day 8 of our Max and the Gatekeeper reading. So exciting. All right. So we're on a new chapter, chapter 16, The Retrieval. And we just ended with Max's grandpa is trying to find Hollick, and he's trying to find out how serious he is about dying for Cindy. So we're going to see what happens. I don't think you need that, the sheriff uttered some strange words as the clamp over Cindy's mouth fell to the floor with a clank. Sheriff, Cindy said in disbelief, what are you doing here? Searching for you, of course. The sheriff's grin spread from ear to ear. It's lucky I found you. Who knows what the Zanozis had in store for you? They love to make sport of anything or anyone they catch. Seeing a familiar face offered Cindy some relief, even if it was an unfriendly person. She figured it meant Grandpa and Max knew where she was. What do you want with me? To keep you safe. If that old fool Joe does what he's told, that's how you'll stay. This didn't sound like it was all bad news. The way he referred to Grandpa indicated he probably knew where she was. I'll see they bring you some food and water. What do you mean he knows Cindy? Max asked. He can talk? I wouldn't call it speaking, more like communicating, Marco touched Elle's head. After another few minutes, he removed it. He says she saved his life twice, and he was bringing her to this spot when she was captured. He came here hoping someone would come looking for her. Can he help us? Max asked. Yes, he knows where she is. Max stepped closer to Marco, adrenaline rushing through him. He couldn't imagine how Cindy got involved with this hideous creature. Can I talk to him? Yes. You need only make contact with him. Max crept towards Elle. His face shook as he placed it on Elle's head. Hello, Elle spoke to him. Hello. He wanted to ask more about Cindy, but his mind went blank. I'm Elle. What's your name? Max. Max pulled his hand away. It was weird chatting with thoughts. How many other creatures could communicate this way? Marco put his hand back on Elle's head. When he removed it, Elle took off into the jungle and they followed. So now we're back to Grandpa. Joe didn't receive any further visitors during the night. When morning arrived, a trog brought a tray of stale bread and water. Joe would have preferred the food in his pack, but to keep up his strength, he ate what they gave him. He tried to sleep but couldn't. The floor and the table were too hard for his comfort. The sun shone through the windows, illuminating the entire room, allowing Joe to inspect his prison. He didn't want to escape yet, but if his plan failed, he might have to. He had just checked the windows for loose panes. When the door opened, 2 fully armed trogs entered and eyed him suspiciously. Come, one ordered in a guttural voice. They waited for Joe to cross the room and then parted for him to pass between them. The trogs walked behind Joe, barking out directions as they went. The castle was a massive network of tunnels, hallways, and staircases. They directed him under an archway into an open courtyard with balconies set all around. Stay here. They cut the ropes from Joe's hands with a knife, and then they disappeared through the open archway. The instant they left, a gate crashed down, blocking the way back, sealing Joe inside. The courtyard had gated archways at both ends, and a pair of wooden doors on either side. A torture area with chains and racks occupied a section along one of the walls. Wind-torn and sun-faded cloth awnings covered the balconies overlooking the small arena. Joe's wait was short. Trogs and other horrifying monstrosities began to pile into the balconies. Once seated, they started mocking and throwing things at Joe. He didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing him grow angry, so he remained calm and motionless. A few objects made contact, but bounced off with any real effect. A hushed silence fell over the crowd as Hudich arrived and sat in the center balcony. The shadows cast by the awning kept his face hidden. At one time, Joe thought light caused Hudich physical pain. Later, he learned that Hudich only liked his victims to see his face right before he killed them. A slew of trogs attended to Hootitch's every whim. One filled his glass while another, a runt, wrote down his orders, and still others rushed around obeying his commands. A door on the side of the courtyard opened, and a trog marched in with Joe's pack. He proceeded to the center and dumped the contents on the ground. Everything was there: the gun, the collar, the water skin, the food, a knife, and other items. The trog left, and the door closed behind him. Joe looked at his items and then at Hootitch. He couldn't fight the feeling that this was a test. He wants to know something. The runt, standing next to Hootitch, moved to the edge of the balcony. Lord Hootitch has decided that you will fight the Hark. This brought cheers from the audience. Once the Hark is released, you may use anything in your pack if you can get to it. He laughed, and the crowd joined them. He then returned to Hootitch's side. Through the far gate, Joe watched several trogs lead in the Hark with chains attached to long poles. A fearsome, muscular beast that could walk on 2 legs or 4. It had tough, leathery, tan skin with red stripes running across its back. Each finger and toe had a long, razor-sharp claw. Its claws were not as big as the fangs protruding from below the upper lip. A crocodile-like snout separated its green eyes and wide, pointy ears. They guided the Hark under the gate and it let out a cry that chilled Joe's blood. A cheer from the crowd followed. Another group of trogs hustled in carrying pikes and surrounded the Hark. The ones escorting the beast pulled a lever on their poles which released the beast. The Hark attacked its escorts, but those with the pikes kept it away from them. A couple of times the Hark threw itself onto the tip of a pike. The pain enraged it more as it bit and ripped the guards. Joe gazed at the scene and wondered if he could start inching towards his backpack, knowing he couldn't beat the Hark to it. Then a voice inside his head warned him, "This is a test. It isn't about dying for Cindy." Joe noticed the runt and Hootitch discussing something. Then the runt walked to the front of the balcony again. "Release the Hark!" The crowd celebrated as the guards backed away. The Hark raced towards Joe at a blinding rate. Joe stood motionless. He could see the Hark's fierce eyes. As it drew near, it uttered a call that drowned out the noise of the crowd. Joe waited until the Hark was about to leap. "Isjim see." He disappeared and dove to the side. The Hark slammed into the gate, thrashing and tearing at the air with vicious force where Joe had been. Joe jogged along the wall. He knew he wouldn't be able to stay invisible for long. On his previous visits to Pakel, he discovered he could use the invisibility spell for short periods. He figured it was because magic was in him and the spell worked on himself. The drawback was in Pakel. He couldn't make it last long. His backpack lay where the trog had dropped it and decided to avoid it. Suddenly his hands became visible. Behind him, the Hark howled as it spotted him. The Hark scattered dirt and rocks as it sprinted after Joe. Before it reached him, Joe uttered the spell again. He didn't know how long he could maintain this game of hide and seek. The more energy he used, the harder it would be to stay invisible. He dashed towards the guards with the pikes. About 3/4 of the way there, his spell lost power. As before, the Hark let out a blood-curdling roar and rushed him. Joe's heart pounded, and his breath came in labored gulps. His muscles screamed for him to stop, and sweat streamed down his forehead. This time the Hark didn't leap, but charged straight ahead. Between the Hark's new strategy and his own hard breathing, Joe struggled to cast a spell. He didn't clear the Hark's outstretched claws as one of them tore the back of his arm, spinning him in a circle. Joe tried to keep his footing but went down. The Hark slashed and chomped the empty air. It was only seconds before the Hark located its prey. Joe lay only feet away. The Hark crept to its victim and let out a wicked howl as if declaring victory, and that its prey couldn't escape this time. Naj, Hootitch called, and the Hark froze in its tracks. Time stopped, and the crowd fell silent. The guards hurried into the courtyard and surrounded the Hark with their pikes at the ready. Joe looked up to see Hootitch standing with his hands extended. A guard grabbed Joe by the back of the shirt and dragged him away as the Hark regained its motor function and attacked its captors. Take him to his room, Hudich commanded as the Trog yanked Joe to his feet. Another Trog joined the first, and they escorted Joe out of the courtyard. As they went under the archway, the crowd booed and threw rocks and rotten fruit. Joe slid his hand over the back of his arm, blood soaked through the sleeve of his shirt. He touched his fingers to the wound and discovered a deep gash about 3 inches in length. Can I get something for my wound? Joe asked, but a harsh grunt was the only response. Joe couldn't tell if they followed the same route back to his room. The size of the castle made it impossible to remember the directions they were taking. When they arrived, the Trogs opened the door and let him enter. Joe was thankful they didn't shove him in. Joe went to a window and cautiously rolled up his sleeve. He used the window as a mirror to inspect his wound. He tore off a piece of his shirt to use as a bandage when the second door opened. Hudich entered and walked to the table. He dropped Joe's pack onto it and quickly stepped back into the shadows. Joe got a brief glimpse of Hudich's face. He had solid red eyes like an albino rat, and his skin, black as night, clung to the skull like stretched plastic. It resembled a black skull with fangs hanging below his lip line. Why are you here? Hudich's voice carried a curious note. I told you. I'm here to take you to the land of the Xenozis and trade you for my friend. And who is this friend? No one you know. Why the land of the Xenozis, old man? Hudich's voice rose. That doesn't sound like something you planned. It wasn't. My friend was captured by your followers. Hudich remained in the shadows without speaking. Joe could hear him breathing, but otherwise he made no movement. You may have your things, Hudich broke the silence and then left the room. Joe took his pack and found the first aid items he always carried. He cleaned and dressed his wound before eating some fruit, a granola bar, and drinking water. Okay, we're going to stop there.